Hiya. Hey, how you doing? So it's an absolute pleasure to be here at what you know as TEDxBrum and what I know as yet another stop on my never-ending quest to show you there is more than one way to come over here and steal your jobs. Yeah, no, see, so you laugh because you're familiar with the kind of overarching narrative about the role of Polish immigrants here. And that's not why I came, of course. What I came is to create children who will speak Polish with Brummy accents to kind of have the overload of glamour. But so you're familiar with the narrative, and this is what we use, right, to talk about people, whether they're negative like this one and you laugh at it, it's easy to mock because you are what we technically refer to as nice people. But there are narratives that come from within communities that are harmful too. And I've been, reading news from home, and Poland is really good at telling stories about itself. And mostly there are stories, because of our history, about martyrdom. And you'll hear Poland being referred to as the Christ of nations, that died to be reborn and then, I guess, ascend, who knows, to Britain. So that would make Britain heaven. But I see, people going, we fought the Nazis. We can't be wrong, we fought the Nazis, as they, put on their black hoodies and then red and white armbands, and then this is what the news from home look like these days. And in these grand narratives, what's forgotten, I think, and what makes it so easy to repeat mistakes from the past are the individual stories. And these people only make me remember my grandmother, who was 8 years younger than I am now when she died in the Warsaw Uprising. And I wrote this poem for her to remember the individual stories that add up to the grand narratives that often mean something completely different. It's called Almost Certainly. It goes exactly like this. It's almost certainly impossible to appreciate the beauty of an explosion. But I like to think of it as a game of pinball, with a single atom propelled forward and hurtling through the gaps in what we see as a solid thing, a unit, like a grain of gunpowder, say, until suddenly, multi-ball, with a flash of many-colored light, all the others come alive, and then things become much too fast to follow, and they all turn nervous and frantic and twitchy, and as they twist and tumble together, they leave behind them trails of searing light and weave them into a flower you can only see bloom once. It's almost certainly unbearable to try and hear the music and the noise of an explosion, but I like to think of it as that moment in a song when the bass line finally kicks in. After the introductory clicks and clacks of the drumsticks, smack the edge of the snare and the closed hi-hat, and yeah, we've heard too many songs not to know what's coming, but still, when the muffled chord explodes, detonated by the kick drum, it reaches through your throat and down to your stomach. You can never be ready for this. And it's almost certainly immaterial what the weather was like at the time of an explosion. But in my mind, I see a sepia snapshot of a perfect summer afternoon, with the weather all the better because you have to provide your own blue for the sky, come up with your own white for the clouds, your own faded red for the bricks, your own brown for those strange stains on the pavement, and there are no people in the picture because the exposure was too long. So just here and there, a hand that lingered on the doorknob, a hesitating foot, a hint of presence, but no more. And it's almost certainly irrelevant. Just one life lost in an explosion, but I like to believe that someone, somewhere, refuses to acknowledge numbers like 200,000 or 85%, and instead they chronicle meticulously the pattern of displaced cobblestones, the frantic flight of startled birds, the words still legible on letters spilling from a leather bag, and the balletic grace of a body flying slowly through the air and trailing blood like an afterthought on this perfect summer afternoon. And they will know that she was 29, that she hadn't seen her two sons for a week, that she had written a love letter in the morning, believing against all evidence that this time things will just work themselves out. And I like to believe that just before the shrapnel hit, she stopped for a moment, with her hand on the doorknob, balancing on one foot, thinking she had just heard the beginning of a song. Thank you.